I would say sometimes I do, but most of the time I'd identify as Northern English. I think it depends where you are really. If I was in another European country, I'd definitely identify more as English. But if I was in a different continent like North America, I'd be much more likely to identify as European. Um, yeah, so it really depends. Well, I grew up in a town in the northwest of England, quite near to Liverpool, and didn't really. I didn't go to Europe until I was a teenager, really. So my kind of idea of Europe came from what was on TV and like my parents who never actually referred to Europe. They used to always call it the continent, and things were continental. So it seemed to be this kind of much cooler, much more sophisticated place. Definitely to the town where I was living. Of course, the continent only referred to the coast of France to the Berlin Wall, not what was beyond that. And yeah, so I'd say a formative moment for me was when England hosted the European Football Championships, Euro '96. It was just an amazing atmosphere in this country, and it really felt like that Britain was embracing Europe at that point, and Europe was embracing us as well. It was a really great atmosphere, and I can't really think of a time when there's been that atmosphere in this country since then, which is quite sad. But also in our town, because we lived quite close to Liverpool, we had some of the football fans that were staying in our town, particularly Czech Republic fans, because their home stadiums was Anfield or Goodison Park. And yeah, I'd never met anyone Czech before, so that was really cool. I'd been studying the 1989 revolutions in history as well, so I'd developed this real fascination with that part of the world, Eastern Europe, and what I thought was amazing about that football tournament was these teams like the Czech Republic and particularly Croatia, who were such a young country in 1996. They came out and they just played so well and with so much pride for their countries, and it almost felt like that was a real turning point, for me at least, in terms of what I saw Europe as, because the Soviet bloc had gone, and this was like the new Europe, and yeah, Britain was part of it, and it was an amazing moment. It's kind of ongoing, but the impact of the financial crash in 2008, I think that really showed the fault lines in Europe, and the fragility of the EU. It was quite disappointing, really disappointing to see how the EU was unable to really deal with the financial fallout from the crash, and particularly the way like the left wing government in Greece was treated. I think that was awful to see, really. And then as a result of austerity politics and like other things related to that financial crash, I think the rise of populism, and again I feel like the EU's been pretty feckless in dealing with that. They haven't really been able to stand up to governments like Viktor Orban's in Hungary, and they've not been able to stand up to Russia, who's taken the opportunity to meddle in elections across Europe. And I feel quite nervous about the future of Europe and whether the EU can continue really with these far right governments in power. I think one of the best moments has been the opening of the Channel Tunnel between Britain and France. That was that was an amazing piece of collaboration between our two governments. And I remember, when the workmen met in the middle and shook hands, and that was like a really beautiful moment. But since then, like with the launch of Eurostar, I feel like that's just been a great endeavour. And I live in London now, so it definitely feels like we are closer geographically to the continent now, and hopefully they feel closer to us. Now you can get a train in a couple of hours to Paris or Brussels or Amsterdam. Yeah, it's a great European success story, that I think. Freedom of movement, because I've been able to meet so many people from the EU in this country, and obviously been able to travel around Europe myself. But I think the ability of people to live and work in other countries is just amazing. And I've got close friends who come from different European countries, and they wouldn't be here if it wasn't for freedom of movement. It's really sad that that probably won't happen. Like future generations won't have that opportunity come December here in Britain. Would be definitely a coordinated and effective response to the climate emergency. Ideally, I think before 2030, really. But I am pretty pessimistic that they'll be able to do that. Just with the way things are going, and the far right governments that are in power across Europe now. It's a depressing note to end on, but yeah, unfortunately, I think that's the reality.